Paulo University is the most recognized university in Latin America. It is. I'm very proud to be part of USP, or as we say, USP family.
That was one of the things I loved about Brazil, is that in Brazil, they make it a word. So like UCLA abutments, right? That type of implant abutment, they love saying UCLA.
UCLA, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
UCLA. What is that? UCLA abutments.
Yeah, University of California, LA. Yeah, they say UCLA abutment.
Another thing that people think it's funny in Brazil is that we add an E at the end of most of the word, the American words. So iPhone is iPhoney.
iPhoney. Yeah, Hachidagi.
Hachidagi.
That's one of my favorites. Telefone.
Telefone.
You got a crooked smile, well that don't bother me much. You double over working double time, you double tough. I'll just shine it up until the sun hit like a glare. I gotta dare, get the fuck up out the chair.
Welcome back to The Happy Dentist. Today is another special episode because we're interviewing our third co-host, Dr. Christian Coachman. So for those of you who don't know, Dr. Christian Coachman is a Brazilian sixth-generation dentist, a family man, and passionate sports enthusiast. Not only did he qualify as a dentist from the most recognized dental school in Latin America, the University of Sao Paulo Dental School in 2002, he has a double degree, having also graduated from the same institution as a dental laboratory technician in 1995. He combined his advanced skills, experience, and technology solution. He pioneered digital smile design methodology and founded Digital Smile Design, which I think every dentist all over the world has heard of. Since its inception, thousands of dentists worldwide have attended DSD courses and workshops, such as the renowned DSD residency program. In addition to developing DSD, he's the developer of worldwide well-known concepts, such as the Pink Hybrid Implant Restoration, the Digital Planning Center, Emotional Dentistry, Interdisciplinary Treatment Simulation, and Digital Smile Donator. Lastly, he regularly consults for dental industry companies, developing products, implementing concepts, and marketing strategies, such as a facially driven digital orthodontic workflow, developed in collaboration with Align Technology. Christian, so happy to have you as a guest on our show.
What a great introduction. Nice. Thank you. And you did your homework. You even know that Paulo University is the most recognized university in Latin America. It is. I'm very proud to be part of USP, or as we say, USP family.
That was one of the things I loved about Brazil, is that they make all of the, like we say UCLA, USC, this kind of thing. And then in Brazil, they make it a word. So like my favorite, you know what I'm probably going to say, Christian, is when they're talking about UCLA abutments, right? That type of implant abutment, they love saying UCLA.
UCLA, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
UCLA. What is that? UCLA abutments.
Like, yeah, University of California, LA. Yeah, they say UCLA abutment.
And another thing that people think it's funny in Brazil is that we add an E at the end of most of the word, the American words, the English words, So iPhone is iPhoney.
iPhoney. Yeah. Hachidagi.
Hachidagi.
That's one of my favorites. We say that in my house, Hachidagi.
How do you choose which words you add an E to? Is it like every word?
It's usually the English words that we adapt to Portuguese.
Telefone.
Telefone. Yeah, now I have to remember. But every time we say interneti. Yeah. I'm remembering it. I'll think about more. But yeah, it's usually when you end with consonant at the end, because we don't have words ending in consonants in Portuguese. They always have a vowel at the end. In US, you have that word. We add one anyway.
I love that. Well, Christian, I know you've been speaking for a really long time now. Before we dive in, for anyone who doesn't know your story, your family's been in dentistry for 170 years. Crazy. I don't know if anyone else can say that. Your family's recognized as one of the oldest lineages of professional dentists in the world. Can you share a little bit about this and what it was like growing up in this legacy and how you decided to continue that legacy?
Yes, I'm always very happy to share this story. Of course, we are very proud of it. I love history. I love tradition. So for me, this story is just amazing. It's my first ancestor in dentistry graduated in 1850, so 174 years now. He's my great-great-great-grandfather. So 6 generations, as you said, recognized by Guinness Book as the longest family in dentistry in the world. So since my father applied for that in 1991 or 2, nobody ever showed up claiming something different. So it's probably true. I met families that are 4 generations. I don't think I ever met a 5 generation. We are 6 and we have a bunch of kids, so we hope somebody will follow. You say that there's no pressure, but there is a little bit of pressure. I hope somebody will follow.
No pressure, but keep our status.
Yeah. It would be a shame to lose the continuation of this, right? My oldest son, he's 27. He's in business. The oldest of my brother is in communication. The second one from my brother is 18. He said he's not doing dentistry. My second one is 15. I don't think he's going to do dentistry. But we have the second generation of kids in the family. I have 2 little ones and my brothers have more. So let's see. Somebody hopefully will continue the journey.
Was there any question for you that you were going to go into dentistry? When did you know?
Actually, I never knew I was going to dentistry. I didn't even knew this story about our family. My father, for some reason, never really told us about this. He was not as excited, or he is excited about the history and tradition, but I'm much more talking about it all the time when people ask. My father was always more low profile, laid back, and more quiet about it. So I didn't really thought about this tradition when I was growing up. Didn't want to be a dentist, neither my brother. I wanted to be an architect until the day before signing up for the test to get into college. Because in Brazil, we don't have college. You go from high school directly to dental school. So you need to do a test and you need to pick when you're 17, 18, you need to pick your profession. And that's it. And I was about to sign for architecture and I don't know exactly what happened. It was a period of 2 or 3 days that I just realized that maybe I was better to do dentistry because I had a bigger chance to succeed. And then with that success, start doing whatever I wanted in my life. But I didn't want to do dentistry. And during the first 2, 3 years of dental school, I wanted to quit every week. It was not good. I was not happy and it didn't feel like it was for me. And the only thing that saved me was the dental technician work. My father told me, look, you hate doing dentistry. You hate the basic disciplines and biology and everything related to the medical side of dentistry. So why don't you go to dental technician school in parallel? And in Brazil, you have that option of doing in parallel. You can do dental school and dental technician school in parallel. Because I was always good, very good with my hands, and I was good with arts and design. And he said, look, maybe you're gonna like doing teeth, and you can do teeth for me, and you can make some money during school. So in a very pragmatic way, I say, I don't know if I'm going to like this, but I'm going to do this anyway, just to make some money and then go to do whatever I want, that is architecture or design or arts and etc. But then I started to do the technician work and I loved it and gave me just enough energy to finish dental school. And then when I finished dental school, I decided that even though I was a doctor, I wanted to still work as a technician for doctors. So I actually never did normal, regular clinical work. That's why I always talk about myself as a technician more than as a dentist.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, the life gives you those opportunities and you make those U-turns and 180 degrees change on paths. And sometimes without knowing, you make decisions that will change your life and will be amazing. For example, I always talk about the decision of not becoming a clinician because it was the obvious path. Everybody was saying, Christian, you are a doctor, man. You cannot continue to work as a technician. Work as a technician for yourself, like many other doctors do. They do their own work, but they see their own patient. You're going to get more reputation, more respect. You're going to make more money. You are a doctor, blah, blah, blah. And something that today for me is very clear. But at that time, I was able to realize that if I was becoming a clinician, I was maybe becoming a good clinician. I would be just one more great clinician in my city. But if I stayed as a technician, I would be the only technician probably in the world that was a doctor and decided to stay working as a technician for doctors. So theoretically putting myself below in the hierarchy of work, but at the same time, completely differentiating myself and becoming this technician that top doctors wanted to work because I could communicate with them at the same level. I could treatment plan the cases with them, could diagnose the cases with them, and above all, could handle their patients, could actually try it in the mouth and do some of the steps for them and have the respect of the patient. So they could delegate a lot of stuff to their technician that was also a doctor. And on top of that, it opened the doors of the world to me, because as a dentist, you cannot work anywhere else besides your country or your state, unless you go back to school. You guys know that. Foreigners cannot be dentists in US. You can be the best dentist in the world. You're not going to work as a dentist there. But as a technician, you can.
There's some of those dentists, like, Altamiro Flavio had to go back to school. I was just talking to him the other day. Incredible dentist.
You have to study. You need for 4 years back to school. You need to say, I'm back from scratch. But as a technician, you can.
Could you imagine? That was my parents. Like, I went to NYU, and half my class was foreign dentists, and I'm like, you're an absolute hero. The fact that you're going to do this once and then you're going to go through that again. It's like, for me, I think similar. I think that's all of us, right? Dental school was a nightmare. It was so bad. I don't know why it hasn't been revamped. Kyle, we need your dental school.
But some people actually love dental school.
I was one of those people. I loved it. It was hard, but I didn't have anything else to do. Like, that was my whole life. And I mean, I guess it wasn't, though, because I was also doing modeling and that kind of stuff. But I loved it. I loved the challenge. I loved the art. I loved becoming friends with some of my professors. I loved college too, even though it was hard. I don't know. I think it's because it was that challenge, and you're doing it with a group of people, so that you're like this gang that everybody understands what everyone else is going through.
You have to like the medical side, the medical profession, and you need to like the clinical work. Some people were born for that, right? I was not born for that. And thank God I was able to find a profession, my profession inside dentistry, that was not being a clinician. First as a technician, then as a communicator, then a business owner, all these things. So I'm constantly finding ways to leverage dentistry without having to be a clinician. And I think that you, Ingrid, you probably as well, I think that you always had something inside you beyond just doing the clinical work. Not that Kyle is not doing beyond clinical work, but he was happy being a clinician. He wanted to be a clinician. He studied to be a clinician. And he was doing great clinical work and being happy doing clinical work for many years.
Yeah, I think what I saw with some of my colleagues were the people that were super smart, and people that came in with straight A's and high SAT scores and all the DAT scores. And then it was the first time that they weren't doing something well because they didn't have the hand skills, right? They're super smart, like crazy smart, get A's on all the tests. But then when you talk about prepping a tooth and measuring 0.3 millimeters above the gingiva and this kind of stuff, they weren't good at it. And those are the people, in my opinion, that hated dental school.
Yeah.
And they would come to me and be like, this is so hard. And oh my gosh. And that was the easy part for me. The hard part for me was studying and learning about the Krebs cycle and all that stuff, because the artistic aspect, the hand skills, that was the easy part for me.
Well, you know what it was for me? I knew I wanted to be an orthodontist. And so I was sitting there learning how to do fillings, how to do crowns, how to do dentures. And I was like, this is a waste of my time. I was like, this is 4 years just so that I can move on. Like, I was obsessed with orthodontics. So I just feel like there has to be a pathway for specialists where it's like, you don't have to do 250 fillings. I was just like, this is torture.
It's an interesting point. I've always said that in the US, I think there should be 2 paths for oral surgery. So there should be a hospital oral surgery residency, and there should be a private practice oral surgery residency. Because what happens is, I have friends that are oral surgeons that went to residency. They were doing breast augmentations and neck dissections, and they did ankle surgeries, and they get out, and what do? Implants and extractions. Like, that's it. And some of these people that I know did 4 years of residency and placed like 50 implants. But they did all this brain surgery and all this stuff. It's like, and they never do that ever again. And then the opposite thing is like, like in Brazil and some other countries, is if you're an orthodontic surgeon, that's all you do. And in the US, many orthodontic surgeons specialize. That's the only thing they do. And you have oral surgeons in the US that will do 1 or 2 orthodontic surgeries a year. And you guys know, if you do 1 or 2 things a year, you're never good at it. And so they're trying to do everything. I don't know. I've just always thought that, especially for oral surgery, there should be 2 paths, which should be hospital, trauma, orthodontic surgery based, or private practice.
Build that in your school, Kyle. We need it.
You have to be careful, because jumping straight to specialization makes you completely lose the big picture. And without the big picture, you cannot connect the dots. And without connecting the dots, you cannot connect your specialty to the whole process of treating a patient. If you really want to be a clinician and you really want to be an orthodontist, your experience with the rest of dentistry is fundamental, is the key. You will only have these 3-4 years for that. After that, you're going to only do what you want, and you're going to do a lot of what you want. But you have that moment where you need to force people to explore, to amplify their vision of healthcare. So I think that's not a problem, And on top of that, making young professionals, young adults doing things that they don't like is extremely important mentally as well, because we can get spoiled very easy, right? And forcing yourself to have the discipline, to have the respect for the patient, even though you don't like doing that, to care about what really matters, and to learn things that is, I will never do this. I don't like to do this, but this problem is in front of me and I'm going to do the best I can.
I love that. I just want to bring it back to you real quick. This is what you do, right? This is the innovation that you brought to dentistry. You're an innovator and a founder. I want to know, I would love for you to share with our audience, how are some dentists using some of these systems that you've pioneered to grow their practice? The DSD systems, the clot concepts, because this is what you're doing is basically empowering dentists to offer comprehensive dentistry more easily. Am I right? And better.
Yeah, that's the vision. That's the dream. The dream is that, I was always exposed to the big picture of dentistry, because that's how my father thinks. He's a natural big picture guy. He's always thinking ahead. He's always thinking about expanding healthcare and being more systemic and being more holistic and connecting teams and professionals, So since the beginning, he always wanted to build like the Mayo Clinic of dentistry, For him, the gold standard of care was Mayo Clinic, and it's still today in the medical world. Such a beautiful project that was built by physicians that really saw that conventional medicine was completely blind for 99% of the things, because we had all these amazing specialists and nobody was connecting the dots. So my father was always into comprehensive care. I remember when he bought the book from Rick Robley in the 90s and brought it to Brazil. My father translated that book, not for a publishing company, for himself, every word. And he made everybody that worked with him to read the book in the 90s. And he started to teach the team the concept of dentofacial, interdisciplinary, comprehensive dentistry. And he even expanded even more, on the book from Rick Robley. He teaches the evolution of dentistry from disciplinary to multidisciplinary to interdisciplinary modern. And my father talks about transdisciplinary, as he likes to explain. And transdisciplinary means that we are not only doing amazing interdisciplinary care, but we are expanding this to different dimensions to take care of the human being as a whole, even emotionally and even spiritually. So that's what he calls transdisciplinary care and transdisciplinary dentistry. So for me, it always makes sense that we needed to think outside the box, that we needed to be humble enough to know how much we don't know, to explore the topics that are not taught regularly, And then as a dentist technician, I was both, as we mentioned. I started to see that this relationship was very shallow and inefficient, and that we needed to expand this, that we needed to see this collaboration from the big picture perspective. And that's how DSD started, basically. Me writing down ways to become much more efficient as a team, to understand that as a technician, I didn't want to stay at the end of the process just waiting the case to be completely prepped. Everything is done. And then they call me, Christian, just make 10 beautiful ceramics. I realized that I have very little impact in the life of the patient if I was just at the end doing the ceramics. I like to say that I always wanted to be a smile architect. I was using this term 20 years ago, and my lectures were about becoming a smile architect. And I realized that if I stayed the same way that I was working, I was an architect hired after the house was already built. So I was not really an architect, and I needed to come to the beginning of the journey when we are diagnosing and planning the case. And that's the reason why DSD is all about exploring diagnostics and treatment planning from a comprehensive perspective. And then I realized that this was the area where dentists suffered the most.
It's still the area where dentists suffer the most after 20 years.
100%. As I always say, we have many more great clinicians than great diagnosticians in dentistry. We have much more great executors than great planners. So in dentistry is like this. We have amazing builders and horrible architects. We know where this is going to take us. But not many people talk about it. We keep investing on how to execute better. And we keep not investing on how to actually understand what is the real problem of that human being sitting in front of us.
Well, I think this was one of the goals that you and I brought with the Oral Facial Club.
Yep.
Was you don't need to know how to be a plastic surgeon. You don't need to know how to do orthodontic surgery. You don't need to know how to be a dermatologist, but you need to know what they can do for your patient.
Yep.
And how do you bring that into your treatment plan? Maybe they do something more minimally invasive that makes you do something less invasive. And just being aware of this, and you've said it so many times that I don't remember exactly how you say it, but like we need to have better generalists.
I talk about the super generalists, the scarcity of super generalists, that we have this thing that GPs are just GPs and the specialists are the super dentists. And for me, above the specialists, you have the super generalists. And these are big picture doctors, the same way that in every country where public health works, once you have a problem, you don't go to a specialist, even though the patient thinks they know what the problem is. I say, I have a problem in my knee. I want a knee specialist. They don't allow you. You have to go to the generalist first because you need to connect the dots and you need to only then activate the right specialist. So in dentistry, a first, second appointment should never be done by a specialist. It makes no sense for a patient to look in the mirror and see that they have crooked teeth and say, I need to align my teeth, so I'm going to go to the orthodontist. That makes no sense because what is going to happen is that the orthodontist is completely biased towards orthodontics, and the only thing that they will see is moving teeth, when that may be one issue among many others and may not be the most important, the most relevant, and may not be the first one to be fixed, and we are missing all of that. So I'm always talking about the comprehensive standardized first appointment, the super generalist, what it means to be a great diagnostician, and of course, how technology can help you in this process. Instead of just talking about technology on execution, because 99% of the lectures are about technology, are about the execution, how to use technology to do aligners, to do CAD/CAM, to do surgery. When we need the most help is diagnosis and planning. And I had a third one that is selling. So the core of DSD is how to help dentists to diagnose, plan, and sell. If you are a master on diagnosing, planning, and selling, sky's the limit.
You've done that well in the sense that you've brought whatever technology is available and made and incorporated it into better treatment planning. And at the beginning, when I first saw you, it was simple. It was Keynote and PowerPoint. And that was what we had. And even before that, you were just literally drawing on printed photos of the patient. And as we started incorporating internal scanning and face scanning and jaw motion and articulation and all of these different digital aspects, you've incorporated that into the planning aspect. And that has been such a gift to dentistry, I think, for the ones that have taken the time and invested, and you've been all over the world teaching people. And still, I go places where nobody knows anything about this. No one's ever heard of you. And it shows still how far behind we are.
It's a journey, right? We started the movement. You can imagine me talking about this 10 years ago. The amount of skepticism and criticism and people just, of course, technology was not ready at that time, but philosophically, conceptually, it's so obvious, right? One thing is to say, I don't have the tools, I don't have the money, I don't have the time. I'm not going to do what you're saying, Christian, but I agree, philosophically speaking. It's obvious. It makes sense, You have a new patient, you explore everything first, you leverage technology to see beyond, You start with the super generalist that knows a little bit about everything, that can create this summary of possibilities, that becomes the quarterback above the specialist, that then activates the specialist and gets better feedback from the things that he's raising the yellow flags, to put a plan together and to then deliver to the patient a comprehensive report, regardless of what the patient will accept. People link the treatment plan with case acceptance. People link diagnosis with case acceptance. These should be two completely different things. It doesn't matter what the patient will accept or not. We have a moral obligation to give complete, comprehensive reports to our new patients.
100%. I have an example living in LA where everyone's really forward thinking and airway focused, right? So I have a couple friends who are naturopathic doctors who are starting to get expansion by ENTs. But what's happening is they're getting expansion and now their upper teeth are outside of their lower teeth. And now they have spaces everywhere. And maybe now they're breathing better, but now what? And to me, that was such a clear example of your ENT has to work in conjunction with your general dentist, with your orthodontist. And this is like a nice, very well-known Instagram clinic in Los Angeles. So Christian, my question for you is these super general dentists, how do they collaborate? How do we collaborate with the plastic surgeon, the ENT who's doing the expansion? How do we give the modern dentist this comprehensive way of diagnosing? How do you see that happening?
Kyle can talk about it as well because he's been collaborating with physicians outside dentistry as well. The first step is the mindset. The first step is to start even considering talking about it. Even to say, I have no clue what to do. That's the first step. It means I know that proper treatment needs to go in that direction and I have no clue how to start. That's the first step. Most people don't even admit that. They don't even go there. As soon as you say, that makes sense, I don't know what to do, you need to put energy on building the strategies of how you're going to make that happen. And for me, the number one strategy is how to standardize and amplify your first appointment. In dentistry, for me, the number one topic today of my lectures are how to transform your first appointment. Everything happens on that first appointment. Everything. And it's beautiful to even think about the business of dentistry because it's the moment where you can most ethically combine great dentistry with great business. Is the first appointment. And nobody talks about the first appointment. You don't see lectures, you don't see books, you don't see nothing. People take it for granted. We learn how to do an examination in dental school. We see some of our mentors doing, a few of them, and we just do whatever. You do a clinical examination, perio, biology, function and structure. You make some notes, you follow that script, and then you're completely biased because if you like more perio, you're going to look into more perio. If you like ortho, you're going to look more ortho. If you like surgery, you're going to look more surgery. And that's it. Dentists are basically looking in the mouth to try to find the things that they like to do, period. And that's a disaster, right? It's like we go into a physician and the physician likes to do
surgery,
and he's going to be looking at you to find a surgery. Everything else is, we are blind. And the first appointment is the game changer because you set the tone, you expand the possibilities, you open the mind of your patient. And that's something that I was always in love because of my father. My father was always about that, right? And so the next step is for you to say, okay, if I believe in this concept, if I really want to take care of people, I need to go for this. So I need to ask myself, who is going to become the super generalist of my clinic, of my practice? Because you don't need to become one if you don't like to become one, but somebody has to, right? Do that first interaction, collect the first data, connect the dots. And if you love being a specialist and all you want to do is do one certain thing, you need to be able to put that other person before you, ahead of you, to be the super generalist and say, look, every time you find my specialty as a priority, call me and I will do my job as part of your plan, respecting your plan, respecting the big picture. So you need to be brave to get out of the comfort zone. And the problem is that dentistry today always historically has been very generous and everybody makes great money. So people don't want to change. It's the same thing in medicine. Why change? We all make great money.
Because we have an ethical obligation.
Oh,
even ethical obligation to our patient to change.
Yeah, that's the right answer. So we do have the people that think, well,
we're living in ancient times. It's my parents are physicians and they used to always tell me this. They're like, never go to the doctor, Ingrid. What?
100%. The worst enemy of teeth is proven. It's proven. The worst enemy of teeth in oral health is called the dentist. The dentist.
How wild is that? So how do we change that?
Communities, Ingrid, communities in the world that are so poor that cannot even get access to dentists at all, they are in better shape than most of the population, middle class that are going to bad dentists. They are in worse shape than the super poor that never went to the dentist. So that's another thing that my father always told me. The worst enemy of teeth is the dentist.
I wonder if some of that, I'm just thinking about, let's say you're taking a population from a big city in the US and you take a population from Africa or Indonesia or something like this. I wonder how much has to do with the food they're eating.
So if they are so poor that they are even below the level, and that's of course terrible for many reasons, but they are below the level that they can get the super ultra processed food, because super poor people have only get processed food and bad food. So that's a disaster. They don't have the high quality of care and horrible diet. But at some point in certain areas of the world, they don't even have that diet. And then they're back to more simple diet.
And they're probably better off.
They are better off. Yeah.
Isn't that funny? You want to be down here or up here? Anywhere in between?
Disaster.
You're screwed. So Christian, what do you think is a gold standard nowadays? We have the most brilliant minds here. Kyle, Christian, the modern dentist who wants to be the modern dentist. They want to be the most ethical dentist for their patient, right? They want to do the best thing. It's not just about the beautiful office. They want the best care. What I'm hearing you say is that there has to be some sort of collaboration and being comprehensive. What's the first step they should take?
I have a document that I started to write recently that I call the 7 steps towards ideal dentistry. And I say steps towards because first I call it ideal because I know that ideal is something very strong and it's something that we will never achieve.
It's unattainable.
But it makes us move continuously towards it, right?
Yeah. It's the carrot holding out there that we'll keep going towards.
So ideal dentistry, we want to constantly be moving towards it. And then steps towards, because we are not there. We will never be there. We will always constantly be walking and running towards it. And I see from all the things that we've been working on, 7 big things that I hope more and more people will think about it. The first one I already mentioned is the mindset. We need to have more people like my father, inspiring more people to think like that. And I know there are many mentors nowadays thinking like that, right? Thinking beyond traditional care. I know that we all need to survive. We need to pay our bills. We need to run our practices. And this means that we need to do the dentistry that we know how to do today. I'm not saying that you need to disrupt everything, go crazy, change everything, but you need to keep a space inside of you to slowly, constantly move somewhere, right? Otherwise you get stuck. And for me, that's the reason why people get so tired of dentistry. And even the mental health issues are involved with that, because once you have that mindset of always keeping space to explore, to move, to grow, to be humble, it makes you feel alive. So a holistic mindset and a systemic data acquisition, that's for me number 1. We need to constantly be thinking, how can I expand the information that I'm getting? Psychological, emotional, physical, medical information, 3D, digital, technological information, and even spiritual information, everything that we can know, somebody that cares, I will not remember exactly the definition, but I remember my father sharing with me the definition of what means to be a health provider, a physician. For the ancient Greeks, they had a definition that was so beautiful. I need to bring it back one day here. And it's just wanting to go beyond to care, meaning exploring the whole, right? That's number 1. Number 2 is moving from fragmented to integrated thinking. Fragmented to integrated thinking. I think that's step number 2. It's an obligation for us to, even though if I'm the best orthodontist in the world, I'm constantly learning just enough from everything else.
You know who's a great example of that, Christian, is our friend Richard Martin.
Yes.
Richard Martin, for those people that don't know, he's an oral surgeon in Dallas, but he's the only oral surgeon I know that owned Pascal Magnier's book. that goes, watches DSD, that learns about bonding, that understands orthodontics, that, I mean, he doesn't do any of that, but he understands every aspect of treatment. It's funny, he's an amazing generalist, even though he's a specialist.
And you can only imagine how this impacts the way he does surgery in a positive way, the way he diagnoses problems, the way he anticipates failures, the way he communicates with the patient, the way he relates to other specialists and to generalists. It's a win-win-win, right? So if you are a specialist, yes, 70% of your time, you need to focus on becoming better and better and better on what you do. But 1/3, I always like to use 2/3, 1/3. So 1/3 of your time, it's for everything else, right, in your profession. So that's for me, number 2, from fragmented to integrated thinking. Number 3 is to move from analog to digital. There's no way. You cannot fight against it. And digital includes AI and how we're going to use it in a smart, positive way. How we're going to take better care of people through technology. That's number 3.
I feel like it should be a requirement. The fact that people are, it's like, I get it, right? Dentists are graduating with $700,000 of student debt from NYU, and you're like, oh, buy the $60,000 scanner. I get it. How do we facilitate that? But that's a later problem. What's number 4?
Number 4 is moving from individualistic decision-making to collaborative dentistry and team communication. What I mean with that is that saying that communication is important is obvious. It doesn't help, right? Saying that you have a good communication with your specialist, it's BS. What I'm saying is to proactively create communication systems, professional communication systems. We communicate using casual processes. Like, how do you communicate with your orthodontist? Oh, I call her once in a while, or I send her a message. This is not a system. This is casual communication. How do you communicate with the lab? Oh, sometimes like this, sometimes like that. What is the system? What is the protocol? What are the tools? What is your routine? There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing when it comes to communication systems in dentistry. It's crazy because dentistry is a team sport. You cannot treat a patient, without communication systems. And people just take it so casually, and I go to a study club once in a while. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about everyday dentistry. Every time there is a decision to be made, professional communication systems should kick in. Why? Because you need to take advantage of the most powerful thing on earth, collective intelligence, not artificial, collective intelligence. You need to leverage collective intelligence for every decision, simple or complex. And if you don't have a system, it's not feasible. That's why people don't do. It takes too much time. It's financially impossible to take advantage of collective intelligence if you don't have a professional communication system.
Quick plug. That is what we provide as part of the 2Front membership services, is you get a HIPAA compliant collaborative care platform with 9 out of 10 patients have malocclusion. They're not talking to your orthodontist about every single one. You have to. This is part of the foundation of your oral health. So every single patient through 2Front, you're collaborating with your orthodontist. It is their architecture of their mouth, right? Like, you can't put a surgical gum graft if your teeth are crowded, right? You got to fix that. So quick plug. What's number 6?
That was 4. 5 concepts to move you towards ideal dentistry. Ideal dentistry, we can call it modern dentistry. We can call it comprehensive dentistry. We can call it slow dentistry. There's so many definitions that are beautiful. So moving into ideal dentistry, number 5 is standardized guided clinical procedures, minimizing at max freehand procedures, uncontrolled procedures. As I say, we don't want to work with great periodontists and orthodontists. We want to work with great periodontists and orthodontists that respect the plan. It's dentistry that respect the plan. If we plan something, we want to deliver an outcome that is as similar as possible to the plan. And for that, we need to use technology. We need to use systems. We need to use appliances. And we need to be humble enough to say, it doesn't matter if I think I'm the Michelangelo of dentistry and I have the best hands in the world. That's not the point. The same way a builder is following the plan, so the final house looks like the blueprint.
This is so important. I mean, this is something I've been harping on for so long with guided surgery, simply just with guided surgery. But you see this in every specialist interaction, so many things. Like, for example, I have this one case where Matt Najad, my partner, and I were working on this case We used the DSD planning center. We planned the whole case before. Now, the thing was that the patient came to us from an oral surgeon. Okay. So the oral surgeon was placing the implants in this case. I wasn't placing the implants. And Matt was doing most of the restorative work, but we were kind of treatment planning together. We planned everything. We made a guide. We made provisionals, and we send them to the oral surgeon. The oral surgeon places the implants wherever they want. And what's interesting is when you look on the CBCT or you look on the pano, they're very parallel, right? The implants, they're equidistant from each other. But when you show where it's going to come into the teeth, they're in the embrasure spaces, they're coming out the buccal. And this was a case that we had planned from the beginning. We knew where the teeth were going before the implants were placed, and all they had to do was place the implants according to the plan, and they didn't. And then guess who suffers? We suffer. The specialist, it's out of their hands, right? They're done. The implant's finished. Then we suffer, and we look like idiots because we're trying to take impressions, and things are touching, and then we can't get the aesthetics to look right because it's coming in the embrasure space. And I have a video of this case because your brother Christian made a video showing where we planned the implants and where they ended up being placed. And I have this great video that I show when I talk about this. And
That's a great, yeah. It's a mindset, right? And this will change faster as soon as patients starts to be educated about it, right? We have the tools to control better the outcomes. And when the pressure comes from outside in, more doctors will change faster, right? The same way it happens with ortho, with aligners. When patients started to knock the doors and say, do you do Invisalign? Because if you don't do, I'm out. And everybody was like, oh, I have to learn this, right? So I hope that people will change anyway without having to wait for the pressure of the patient. But there's only advantages. The problem is that you have to invest some time and energy at the beginning until it becomes a routine, until you start to actually become more efficient with it and even profit because of it. So it requires a little bit of energy. So that's number 5.
We have one life. We have one life, and we've committed to this one life, and we've committed to this profession. So let's do the absolute best we can, right?
I believe so. We are working hard towards it. Number 6 step towards modern ideal dentistry is moving from a conventional lab to a digital planning center lab, meaning working with labs that are understanding that they cannot just do restorations or do ortho appliances. Comprehensive dentists, super generalists, they need to collaborate with interdisciplinary planning centers, places that are equipped with all the technology, and labs that are hiring dentists, treatment planners, right, to help generate the reports and the simulations and the documentation to allow the dentist to decide better and perform better. Because it's impossible for a dentist to acquire all the technology and to be in front of the computer doing the whole thing. It's impossible. You will only be able to do little pieces of it. So you need to collaborate with centers that will be doing the heavy lifting when it comes to technology and standardizing information and reports. And that's exactly what we've been doing. And we are seeing that finally some companies are going towards that finally, and some labs are going towards that. So you see aligner companies starting to plan the smile, not the aligner only. You start to see aligner companies planning towards the face, not planning towards class 1. You start to see implant companies starting to plan the restorative design, the occlusion, the facially driven design. Of course, still very fragmented, but they're starting to move because the ideal world is to have centers that are specialized on facial analysis, airway analysis, facially driven smile design, interdisciplinary treatment planning, and having all the software to do all of this and giving to the dentist as a gift. This is all you need to see to make the best decisions, because then the execution will just be a consequence. Manufacturing devices, appliances, aligners, and restorations will be a consequence of this work. So this is a big one. This is the key collaboration to create modern dentistry, right? The dentist being this ally, this partner, this interdisciplinary digital planning center and manufacturing center that can help them make better decisions and execute better. So that's number 6 step towards modern dentistry or ideal dentistry.
the last one.
There's the 7, the last one. Good things, they always come in 3, 5, 7, or 10. So you cannot finish 6 or 8. So 7 is moving dentists from weak educational tools and skills to ethical patient onboarding and educational skills. So every successful, modern, ideal interdisciplinary dental clinic will have somebody or a few that are amazing ethical communicators to onboard the patient on the right way, to allow the patient to own their answers, to allow the patient to value comprehensive care, to do the right thing, to save the patient from themselves many times, right? So this depends on educational skills, communication skills, ethical skills, right? Ethical communication. So for me, that's the 7 component of an ideal dentistry environment. So that's it. Holistic mindset, integrated thinking, digital visualization, collaborative approach, standardized guided execution, digital planning center, and ethical communication and patient onboarding. That's the summary of my vision of the future of dentistry.
I really like it. And I think the way that I'm like starting to think about this is like part of it is a mindset, obviously. Like it's just changing fundamentally how we operate as dentists. Part of it is like, I think dental education, so much of what dentists do is just based on dental school, right? Dental education, I think, should be working with technology companies. If we know that's the key here. And the collaboration part, it goes back to the mindset of it takes a village. It's not all in our hands. So how do we encourage dentists to really realize that it takes a village and this I think is going to solve, Kyle, like so much of like our loneliness problem in dentistry is like feeling like I'll never forget my first day in the clinic behind a chair, not having my co-residents. And I was like, oh my God, what is this, right? So if we could encourage that from the patient's perspective, it'll help us from the loneliness perspective, right?
It's a complicated answer. I think the dental education system is so challenging because having worked at a university for 9 years, and just over those 9 years, seeing all the technology change, and I remember a lot of the administrative team saying, what do you want us to take out? And I think that is the challenging thing, is that there's, like Christian said, you need to know the basics, but at what point do we take out amalgams? We did at USC. They don't learn amalgams anymore. I think they have 1 day on it or something. But what do we take out? That's the challenging thing. And I think we said this before, is that I think dental school could be 10 years and you'd still get out and not know everything. And I think that just explains why it's called the practice of dentistry, is because you should, when you think about, if you guys know the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you think you know everything, then you realize you know nothing. And then you're on this path of this, they call it the slope of enlightenment. And it's like what Christian said, it's the carrot in the front. You're never done. I think that's how practice is.
Pursue brings the joy. And I can say another name, Ingrid, what is another name for this graphic that I did here with the 7 components of this movement? I call the 7 steps towards ideal dentistry, but for me, this is the 7 steps towards happy dentistry. Just by thinking about this, it makes me excited, makes me feel alive, and it makes me feel like I want to move and I want to learn and I want to improve.
Because we're not just like execution focused.
Yeah, in order to be a great dentist, and this is the same with the medical doctor, or really many different professions, I think you have to be a lifelong learner because our profession is constantly evolving. But what you see in many of, I would say, my dad's years, people that graduated maybe in the 70s or even the 80s, what most dentists do, they learn whatever they learn in dental school. They do that for 40 years and then they retire. And that may have been okay back then when technology wasn't improving that much. In 20 years, the thing that changed was maybe starting to use more ceramics, right? Maybe the materials changed. But now it's like every decade is like 40 years of change. You have to be a lifelong learner and be passionate about learning that stuff. I love learning new things. Doesn't mean it's any easier. It still can be very overwhelming and having to focus on what do I learn? What's the most important thing? Because you'll never learn everything. But being passionate about continuing, getting better, self-improvement, and learning over time, I think is what makes a good clinician.
100%. And it makes me think, Christian, going back to what you said about like consumers pushing change, right? Invisalign's the most incredible example of pushing change within dentists, right? I'm almost like, let's talk about the obvious. Let's talk about the fact that dentists are the most hated profession out there out of anyone. So how do we change that? How do we create this awareness for consumers of which dentists are almost like, it's like taking a pledge to be a modern dentist and committing to this 7-step program? Like, Christian, I'm thinking like you need a membership. How do we create a membership where dentists have a plaque and it's accessible to the 28-year-old dentist that has $700,000 of student debt and they want to be the most ethical, most modern, most comprehensive, growth-minded dentist out there. And they're learning from you for the rest of their life.
That has been the mission of DSD since 15 years. Our education is 100% towards this. The certification process, the whole collaboration, consultancies, everything that we do is trying to move people into this process and make it exciting and collaborative. And as I said, it's a journey. It's hard for us to go out there and say, look, the only dentists that are good are the ones following our idea, or, don't go to a dentist if they don't do X, Y, Z. It's kind of dangerous to get there, right? And even Invisalign, of course, Invisalign it's a huge company with a huge marketing budget, and they invest heavily on direct to consumer marketing. And this was one of the pillars of their success. Is that the best for quality of care? I don't know. I think that because as soon as you create something big, you're stuck with the numbers and the financials, and then you need to do what is the best for the numbers. So at the end, we need to rely on individual dentists that are willing to keep their freedom and their ethics and not sell their soul to the devil, keep their practices, do what is right. And I think the best way to help dentistry to get better is to help people that are having the courage to do what is right by making their path more healthy and more fun, right? So creating communities around this and supporting each other and sharing stories that makes us feel like it's worth continuing to evolve.
I think we should address the elephant in the room, which is that it's becoming less financially great for a dentist out there. With the more debt that you accumulate, with the rising housing prices, with dentists becoming more saturated and getting less patients, overhead becoming higher, staff costs becoming higher. They have to do that in light of the fact that it's so hard financially for these young dentists that are graduating. I think I read that the average dentist in New York City is making $80,000 to $88,000 a year.
Oh my God.
That's it?
Yeah, graduating with over $700,000. Like, how in the world do we? So that's kind of the battle that we're fighting as a profession, is like, how do we balance the fact that we have to do this, like, vehement change that Christian, we've got to do.
This is a whole new topic. This is something that there is a big disruption happening in dentistry on the business model of dentistry.
We should do an entire episode on this.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Dentistry will have to go through this process because the old way is not the solution. We will suffer through the transition, but we need to get into a more stable and a model that makes more sense. Having every single dentist opening their little private clinic practice, it's not going to happen. It's gone. This model is gone, and it doesn't make sense. I believe, as an optimistic person, that the transition will be hard. We're going to have many downsides, but at the end, a new, better model needs to come up.
100%. And I think for our listeners here, part of what I think brought us all together is we are so passionate about our industry, about bettering our profession, and we've taken different paths on the business side to making this profession better for dentists. We'll keep talking about this. We'll keep bringing on people who are also trying to make our profession better from a mental health standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from a collaborative care standpoint, so we can continue to provide these tips. So I know we're running like 20 minutes over. Christian, it's been such a pleasure to hear your story in more detail. So thank you for sharing on this interview. And I think we've got some good topics for our next few episodes.
I've got a few little final thoughts from today, summarize some of the things we talked about. One thing, and I'd like to explore this in a whole episode, is Christian really took advantage of all the different opportunities in dentistry. This is something everyone thinks. I mean, this is what I thought. You get out of school, you become a private clinician. That's what you do the rest of your life. Christian went against that. I've eventually went against that too. But I think this is a topic we could talk about, different opportunities in dentistry.
I actually wrote notes about this. I thought we were going there. We didn't. I think it was great, the topic we covered, but we can explore that. The staging of your career and how to explore different opportunities.
We need better generalists, I think, is one thing that Christian has talked about for years and is so important. We need to know what we don't know. That's, of course, difficult, but it's a challenge. I like how you said the ethical obligation to change. I think that was a fantastic way of why I need to change. You have an ethical obligation to change. Collective intelligence is something that you and I have talked about for a long time that I learned from you, but I just love how you say that. It's so simple, collective intelligence. And I think when we can leverage collective intelligence, we can become better diagnosticians, better communicators, better clinicians, better business people. And then last thing, you have your 7 steps to be a happy dentist. And I think that summarizes a lot of what we talked about today.
I love the summary. Fantastic.
This is so good, Kyle. We should have a whole episode on each of these. I mean, this is incredible. I feel like we're finding like what we can really dive into now.
Oh, each one of the 7 deserve an episode. We can prepare content, explore and learn and talk more about it.
100%. And this makes me think, by the way, that like we should explore these ideas of bringing on different people for interviews. And Kyle, this kind of makes me think back to like the All In podcast. Like maybe we bring on people for interviews for like 20 minutes or something. And then the rest of the episode is like exploring collective intelligence. You know what I mean? Like someone else exploring the ethical obligation to change. And that way we have like a theme of every single episode where we can like dive in and each do our homework and prepare about things that we want to talk about in this realm.
We should find people from outside dentistry that are experts on these topics, because we're talking about mindset change. We're talking about integrated thinking process. We are talking about AI and visualization, collective intelligence, building a production line, processes and protocols, systems, how to build systems. We're talking about communication, ethical communication. These are topics that people from outside dentistry can help us much more.
Christian, I love that idea. I love that. Let's find the best of the best.
Yep. Some of these people may be super okay on joining us, say, I will go there 1 hour.
Yeah.
Imagine
I'll join these 3 dentists.
ethical communication, such an amazing topic, and we have an expert from outside that is focused on that. US is the best place on earth for these type of topics and people talking about these topics, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's find it.
Christian, I gotta have someone on my team start to do research on like the best people. If you guys want to, I took some notes, Kyle, on what you just said. If we can think of other topics like that, we can start to do some research on who we can bring on. I'm sure we can find anyone we want to bring on for all this stuff.
And all we will do is to make the translation into dentistry, in each little segment and topic, we bring it to the reality of the dentist, and the conversation will be super cool.
I love that. Like, how do we bring this knowledge that we're going to collect to dentistry and translate it?
Honestly speaking, I believe that should be our model. It's the 3 of us and people outside, and the guests from outside the dentistry.
I'm with you. That just hit me too. I was like, oh my God, this is the value that we can bring.
I think we need to pepper in big names in dentistry too, though.
We can, but we can then highlight that as a special episode. We are today doing something unique. We are bringing somebody from dentistry. This is how special this person is, because to add value here, you need to be ultra special in dentistry. Otherwise, we can do our research and talk about the topic, right? Dentistry. So it's either somebody completely above the curve and completely out of the box in dentistry, somebody that is doing something super, super special and unique, clinical, or in the business of dentistry. Or we prefer to find resources outside dentistry.
Like, I think the reality is if our vision and our mission here is to be a resource for how dentists operate, how we change their happiness, everything we're talking about, right? These 7 things. I think we need resources for both of them, Kyle. If you're saying like, who are the best specialists in the world? Who are the best people that have done this, like integrated technology into their practices? That oral surgeon that you mentioned, I want to bring him on. Why is he like the only oral surgeon that's also a generalist? And so what I'd love to start to do is just to kind of list out these topics and like, what value can we bring to our listeners based on this person's expertise?
Yeah, I will write on the document the topics that I think would be super cool to invite people from outside dentistry. And then, Ingrid, you can start trying to find these people.
I'm on it. LinkedIn, my EA will start pinging people. We'll make it happen. Well, to our listeners, thank you so much for joining our 2nd episode of The Happy Dentist. You can see we're sitting here exploring how we can add value to our listeners. And we're so excited to continue. You have 3 people who are super passionate about changing this industry, changing hearts, changing minds, and bettering our profession altogether. So thank you again for joining. If you like this, please press like, subscribe, share with your friends, and give us feedback. If there's topics you want to hear, let us know, and we will go ahead and add it to our docket of things that we can add value on. So Kyle, Christian, thanks again. This is awesome.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Get the fuck up out the chair. Whoa.